every person, based on your birthday and time, you have a 5 element. Every person has a certain path, but that's not the entire story. Because we all live in this society, we have this collective mind, which is also influencing. So we are actually co-creating our reality. So in addition to your personal life blueprint, you also need to look at the environment, the collective, in order to have accurate reading. If you use 2 different methods or multiple methods and they come out to have similar conclusion, the accuracy is very, very high. I'm not telling people to just solely rely on, but with that knowledge, it can help you to make a decision. I'm sure a lot of people in this similar situation, they don't know when is it going to end. Then whether they should scale down their business or even close down their business, they have no idea. They have to take some kind of guess or make a judgment call. But with the help of the metaphysics, can give you more color. And then later on, after you go through this cycle and the learning process, if you can minimize your losses or exposure, then you have a better chance when you have so-called better luck in the future. You have more resources to grow.
Welcome to the Awakening Entrepreneur Podcast. This show is for entrepreneurs that have chosen to define their life beyond the material. They have followed their soul on a hero's journey towards the mystery of the spiritual. I'm your host, Garrett Ng. Each episode will be learning from awakened entrepreneurs and spiritual thought leaders. They have broken through the mold of being ordinary to extraordinary, challenging our paradigm, shining light to the dark, giving hope when there is doubt. The moment of truth is upon us. It is time to transcend our world from fear to love. Are you ready? Let's go! Okay, wow. Welcome to 2021, our first podcast for the year. I first want to acknowledge all of the listeners that's been following our show and subscribing to our show. I have a mission to help awaken as many people as possible. And with you subscribing and sharing our podcast, it really goes a long way for doing that. In 2021, we thought we'd kick off with a special bang. And the theme of 2021, some of the best podcasts from my personal standpoint in 2020, last year, came from people that just guided from the universe and somehow we got connected. We don't know each other from a bar of soap, but somehow when we started talking, it seems like we've got at least 7.5 lifetimes that we've been together, maybe more. And so just letting go of wanting to control who the guest should be and letting the guest come to myself will be the kind of the theme for 2021. And we started with a bang for this year with Master Stephen Au. Master Stephen Au was referred to me by one of our previous guests, Sim Swin. She's from Hong Kong. Very awesome lady, spiritual path. And she said, Gary, you got to meet this person. This person is like my mentor, my go-to person. He's like so well versed in so many of the mystical arts, especially the Chinese mystical arts, which even though I'm Chinese and I've got that background, but still like, unless you really know the culture, know the language, like I'm just scratching the surface, like touching on some Tao Te Ching and studying some I Ching stuff. But this gentleman, Stephen Au, he's gone deep. If you don't know, in Chinese, there's like 5 main pillars. They got they call it the 5 arts. That basically covers like a wide spectrum of things, from Feng Shui to palm reading to many other things I didn't even know the English terminology for, because I may have heard it from my grandma, from TV, movies from a long time ago. But I know that it's kind of like a lost art, but it dates back to thousands of years. So Stephen, if you don't know him, you haven't heard of him, he's also been a big part of the Tony Robbins community. So he's into personal development. But prior to that, He's very like right brain thinking, which is logical mind. Went through the academic path of really studying hard, got his MBA, got into investment banking, made a whole ton of money, and then something happened. And I'm gonna let him share the story, but something happened from a wealthy, successful investment banker suddenly triggered the spiritual awakening. And for all those of you listening to the show, you know that the spiritual awakening is no easy task. It's often very daunting to navigate. So I can't wait. I really look forward to uncovering the stories and learning about the five arts and picking Stephen's brains on the spiritual world, especially from the Chinese perspective. So welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary, for the introduction. I'm very honored to be your guest, in this podcast. Um, just give a little bit of my, background. I was raised in Hong Kong and educated in the US. I went to high school and university there. And then after that, I worked in Wall Street for a couple of years before I came back to Hong Kong. And, since I came back to Hong Kong, I started learning, Chinese metaphysics. But at the time, I was just reading books and stuff like that, and then went to see different masters. But then later on, I got really interested in it. So I guess beginning in 2005, I finally, joined the Chinese metaphysics class. And then I began my journey in the five arts area. I mean, multiple disciplines in the five arts, namely the fate, which is the fortune telling part, such as Bazi and, purple astrology. And then you have this physiognomy, which is basically face reading and, palm reading. And then you also have divination, which is I Ching. And then you have healing, which is Chinese medicine, and being, which is, the spiritual part of the Chinese, five arts. So my journey actually in spiritual awakening began in 2008. At the time, if you recall, there was a financial tsunami. Okay, I was actually a structured credit specialist, meaning I was doing credit derivatives, basically the CDOs that, blew up the market. After that, I lost my job, okay? And then at the same time, I had my first child. And also, I lost a lot of money at the time. So I was very depressed and I was so lost because, my education only taught me to become like, a banker or a quantitative, guy, because I studied computer science, econ math, as well as business. So I never thought about anything like the right brain, spirituality, creativity, art, that kind of thing. No, nothing. And then ever since the market collapsed, I was so lost. And then later on, I actually found out that I had thyroid disease. And I went to see, doctors, right? So at the time, obviously, I would go for the conventional medicine. So I went to see the doctors in Hong Kong. And then I also went to the US to get a second opinion. And all these doctors told me one thing, was to do surgery immediately. And then I asked the doctors what were consequences. And then they said, after I removed my thyroid, I had to take pills for the rest of my life. Then, I told myself maybe I should try something different before I go to that route because it's not reversible. At the time, I knew nothing, right? But I so happened, to join a, class offered by a Catholic father in Hong Kong. He was very progressive. He invited like many experts, from around the world to, help the, the Catholic. And at the time, there was a guy, he was a hypnotherapist. He was a student of this famous hypnosis of father. It's called Milton Erickson. I don't know whether you heard of his name before, but he is a very famous guy in hypnosis. And then his student came to Hong Kong, and then I was invited to do a healing, and it was recorded. And then, he sort of hypnotized me. And then, throughout the process, I was doing some talking with him. And then after about an hour or so, and then he said I was healed. I was like, how could that happen? I mean, I didn't, really fully believe in that. But then, he said, yeah, it's done. As long as you believe in it, you're healed. And then later on, I went on to try different type of energy healing. There was another person, I think it's a guy from Brazil, right? He, was in Hong Kong again at that time. He saw me, and then he saw me. You have a lot of energy on top of my head, okay? And that was, the main cause, he said, for my thyroid disease. But obviously, I didn't know anything about energy at the time. So I kind of just follow, what he suggested. What he told me was very simple. It was just to focus my attention on my feet. Because I never really focus my attention on my feet, right? Even when I'm talking to you right now, I don't feel my toe until I really pay conscious attention on it. So after I did that, and then, I felt, kind of relief a little bit. And then he told me to keep practicing it. And he said the energy would go down from my head all the way to my toe. He said, this is something really crazy if you tell a conventional doctor. But for me at the time, I had no other choices but to, give it a try. And he wasn't asking me to take any medicine or drink any medicine. So, I was just open to give it a try. And then a few months later, I actually got better, right? And better. And then eventually I was healed. So I never had to do the surgery. So I, began to believe in the energy healing and practicing these meditation.
Wow. I remember like when the Brazilian person said that you've got energy on your head, can you feel it?
I could feel it because I always, have this kind of rush in my face. People always say that, my face kind of red, even though, when I'm just talking normal. Okay. I guess, first of all, my skin is kind of white. Okay. And second, because maybe my blood circulation is not as good because at the time I didn't really do exercise. And then, I was spending all my time, in my head, in the investment banking environment, you could understand that, we face the computer screen every single day for many, many hours. And then it was a very hectic kind of job and very stressful. And then over time, you develop some really, bad habits. And I never, try any kind of like, energy healing or meditation at the time. So I was just, doing this so-called like a mindfulness practice, just to sit still and then focus my attention on my feet. And then the energy just sort of, flow down to my feet. And then after practicing for a few months, then you really feel the difference.
Yeah, I can relate to that because when I was in my beginning of the awakening journey, one of the first symptoms that came up was I could feel this like throbbing energy in my head. That was partially because I was focusing on my middle of the brain, so kind of like my crown chakra area, because they say that like your mid prefrontal cortex is the calmer part of your brain. So kind of let's go to the gym with that part of the brain and just give it more control so I could be more conscious. Because there's no point learning all these personal development strategies. And in the moments of high intense external circumstances that we tend to get triggered, I'm just reacting. So if I can work out that part of the brain, I could be more calm, I could be more conscious. I have the awareness to choose what strategies I want to react or how do I want to behave in that situation, right? Rather than just letting my monkey brain or lizard brain like just take control. But over time, it just started building up huge amount of energy, throbbing energy, boom, 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 like a giant headache. And it started when I was meditating. And then it got to the point that even when I'm not meditating, just boom, 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 boom. And I remember when back in, I don't know what year, probably like 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, when I was in Vegas, I bumped into Master Cole. And Master Cole said, well, I told him my symptom. He said, well, why don't you just try to like focus the energy from your head going down to your feet? And that kind of like dissipated the energy. I go, wow, that it works. Like, and he explained somehow it's like letting the energy ground itself or something. So yeah, very, very similar experiences. What I'm also curious about, it's you said it's a thyroid disease, and thyroid is kind of like the chakra for your voice of influence. So if there was
Yes,
something blocking it, and then somehow you calmed it or you unblocked it, and after that on your path to become a teacher and using your voice a lot more, how miraculous is that?
exactly. I mean, I learned about these chakra things, a couple years ago when I joined the planet healing. And then, of course, I was also a student of Master Stephen Coates. And then I learned about the throat chakra was a way to express. So, I had a blockage there. That's my guess, okay? At the time, okay, because I was really frustrated with my job. So, I didn't really, express myself. So this congested energy sort of stuck in the throat chakra, right?
Yeah.
And after I realized that, I began to share, a lot of my learning with people. And the more I share, I actually, felt really good about it. So I had a way of expressing myself. I think part of the reason of the healing was because of opening up, sharing, knowledge with people really helped. In addition to, the therapist
Wow.
who helped me at the time.
So then how do you navigate through the loss of your job? Because that's pretty much like you build up a whole life to be, especially from Hong Kong, is money equals success, and success that's the goal of life. And the success in Hong Kong is not like, hey, health and fitness. No, it's not beautiful relationship or loving family. It's about money. So you got an investment banking that most people in Hong Kong will regard as one of the, at least you in the seat to potentially be one of the most successful people in Hong Kong based on the various archetypes. And now that is gone, how do you navigate out of that situation?
It was difficult, to be honest, because at the time I did not, do any, real personal development. Okay, I was just reading books. I was listening to Tony actually, but at the time I didn't go to any of his events because, I had this limiting belief of going there by myself. And I sort of talked to my wife a couple of times, but she wasn't really interested. So I was just relying on listening to the CDs and reading books. And then I realized that, I could, start my own career. So what I did was I opened up a learning center for children, but I was doing a franchise. Okay. But unfortunately, the franchise partner wasn't doing well. So that business didn't fly at the end. So I lost more money. Okay. But that actually, was a very good lesson for me because that was my first time to do real business as not exactly an entrepreneur, but, is somewhere in between an entrepreneurship and a job, I would say. Then, find another job in the finance industry, working for a Chinese company at the time. And then over time, I built up, my confidence again. And then, I joined the personal development journey. So I went to many events organized by Success Resources, such as the T. Half Acre Quantum Leap program, Tony Robbins event. And then I became a big fan. And through Tony, I was able to connect with the other experts that were introduced through his program, right? So, Master Stephen Cole, for instance, Donny Epstein's, as well as Keith Cunningham. So I went to their events. So that was a really amazing journey. And then after I acquired so much knowledge at the time, I set up a Hong Kong securities company with some partners. We got the SFC licenses, so we got our own company for a couple of years before I moved over to Hong Kong. Then I sold my shares to my partner. So that was, that part of journey.
Nice. So yeah, tell me about like the five arts. I guess the one that I'm most familiar with, like at a young age, is like do some palm reading and face reading, and why I like it so much is whenever I go to Temple Street in Hong Kong, like they always said that I'm gonna be rich and successful. So it's like, well, it's a placebo effect the more that you go, the more that you reinforce that you're going to be successful. So I felt that was helping me. So do you want to talk us more about, like, did you learn the 5 arts at the same time? Was it one that you started with and eventually led to the other ones?
Yeah, I just when I came back, I guess to Hong Kong in year 2000. One day when I was walking in the bookstore or something, I saw something called 紫微斗數. In English, it's called purple astrology. And then I just opened up the book, okay, and then I found some really interesting materials in there. Basically, it was a method developed, I guess, in India originally, and then over time it became Chinese many hundred years ago, or maybe thousand. That's based on your birth date and time. Okay, they can set up a astrology chart, which is different from the Western astrology. But basically, they're using the stars as references, so you can read your life basically with that chart. And it was relatively easy for beginners to learn because you can just refer to the name of the stars, and each star has some particular characters. Okay, but then once you learn the surface, when you want to go deeper, it's difficult. You got to get a master to teach you, because the Chinese, I would say the 5 arts, they are so esoteric. So very often you run into people who only know the half truth in the market. Okay. My experience was, if you randomly go to a bookstore to pick up a book, you're probably not going to get the, authentic stuff in there. Yeah. So then I spent some time learning it. And later on, I realized that I actually learned, something wrong, until I met a master who was able to give me an accurate reading. Because for anyone, right? Basically, if you give me the correct birth date and time, I can also, give you some general characteristics about you. I'm sure you can do the same with Western astrology or numerology. Okay. Layman would not be able to tell the difference. Okay. So only until, you get to a certain stage, and then you realize that, it's not working most of the time, then you start questioning whether it's your skill level or is the material. Of course, in the very, very beginning, I was, casting doubt on myself, because, I would not blame the materials, right? Because I didn't know enough about it. But then after, a while, after meeting a certain master, then I realized that I learned something wrong. So I went on to study with this gentleman in Hong Kong for a couple of years. Okay. But then another thing happened, which was the 2008 financial tsunami. Okay. Because nobody warned me about that crisis. Okay. Although I already learned the purple astrology for a couple of years, then I was wondering, was it me not able to read it in correctly, or something else? Because at the time I didn't know there were limitation in fortune telling as well. Fortune telling is real. Okay, I can tell you right now. Okay, every person has a certain path, but that's not the entire story. Okay, because we all live in this society, we have this collective mind which is also influencing. I mean, I'm sure you know about the unified field, right? So we are actually co-creating our reality. So in addition to your personal life blueprint, you also need to look at, the environment, the collective, in order to have accurate reading. I mean, COVID is a very good example right now. We are not allowed to travel, even though I can see from your chart that, okay, you're suitable to travel this year. You're not able to travel because of the restrictions, right? So after the financial tsunami, I went on to look into other kind of 5 arts.
So if we can just, I guess, stay on the purple astrology for a sec. I want to, I guess, get from the understanding is how on earth the people back in the days able to work out someone's life path and how things is going to pan out. Yeah, was it downloaded to them? Was it studying the stars moving a certain direction? How did they get so intelligent?
This is a mystery. Okay, I believe there's a higher intelligence actually passing those knowledge to human beings. Why do I say that? Because look at purple astrology, even the I Ching and the Chinese Baji. Actually, you cannot find solid evidence that who were the inventor
Yeah,
of these methods. But somehow these knowledge pass on for many, many generations and they still applicable.
yeah,
Okay. But I can tell you one thing. Basically, whatever method you use, we are actually using a similar concept as in the Western metaphysics, which is as above, so below. So we are talking about the stars in the universe because we human being living on Earth, we are part of this universe. We are actually influenced by the movement of these stars, and these stars or planets they move in cycles. That's how the universe works. Whether do you believe it or not, you are part of the universe, and the stars they move in a certain way based on certain rules. So if you go deep into that, it's related to like sacred geometry and numbers as well as astronomy. Although astrology is different, but they are sort of related.
yeah. I haven't really looked into the history of both Chinese and Western astrology on how it came about. But when I was studying like numerology and the Pythagoras methodology, how would this guy somehow using maths and numbers and work out someone's life path and how the life is going to be, their personality and characteristics? And I just find it extremely fascinating. And typically, I guess with my limited understanding is that if it's one guy, that guy could be like channeling message like that. I'm not too surprised, but I know the Chinese stuff has been around for thousands of years, and like you said, like it very much is a lot of them is very mysterious. Even the Tao Te Ching, like people say Lao Tzu, but who is this Tao Te guy? Like nobody knows. There's theories and speculation. It's almost like who created Bitcoin. There's theories on who created it, but nobody really know. But yet there's something so significant.
Yes, I do believe in download. Yeah, if you connect, because even in the Chinese theory, always talk about the heaven, earth, and the people, right? So as long as you are connected to this field, right, you can actually access all the information available.
So let me ask you another kind of off topic. But when I was studying a lot of the other ancient cultures, like from Australian Aborigines to the Toltecs, the Mayans, and a lot of them are using plant medicine of some sort as a gateway, as a tool to help them get downloads. Like I'm not familiar with any of the Chinese on using plant medicine to achieve that. But have you heard of like is this a significant part, or somehow they use other modalities to connect?
Um, in general, I think Chinese don't rely on the plant medicine, although you can, still find that in China. Okay. But most of the time, these people just develop, I guess, esoteric meditation as well as like Qigong to
Yeah,
help reach this altered state of consciousness.
yeah,
And based on my understanding, by doing that, you can also achieve basically the same thing as the plant medicine with more control because you can really control what dose can get you to that stage. But by practicing these so-called meditations and qigong, you can reach that state. And actually, among the five arts, that's considered to be the highest level
mm,
because that can really change your life more than anything else and is the most difficult one that it takes time to practice. And you also need to have a master to guide you. Otherwise, you can, go into some trouble later. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like if you look at South America region as kind of like the region where it's most famous for the plant medicine. In Asia, not just Chinese or China or India, but like you look at Thailand and Japan and Korea, they all got their own individual spiritual practice. But at the basis of it, like you said, it's based on energy work and meditation. And some of the dark room type of meditation, like is or silent retreat, like those type of like varieties of meditations are like they're quite masterful at it compared to the West or even like South American region, or even I guess I don't want to say one is better, but it's what they're more popularized and focused on.
Mm. Mm. I hear you.
So tell me about like after you study the first art, you said you kind of like found certain limitation, like studying the purple astrology, and what do you moved on to next?
Yes. Then I move on to Daji and Feng Shui.
Mm,
Okay. Daji is another fortune telling method. Okay. It's actually the most, I would say, most popular one. And it's the foundation for many of the, Chinese metaphysics. Basically, we use the Chinese system of the heavenly stem and the earth branches, I call. So every year, for instance, this year, I mean, in Chinese calendar, is a year of rat. We're still in the year of rat, although we are in 2021. That's basically, the talking about the earthly branches, which is based on a 12-year cycle. Okay, we do that because the Jupiter and the Earth has this rotation, speed of 12 years. Okay, and then based on that, we use that as a reference point. So that's why we come up with this, different animals, right, in the Chinese zodiac. With this system, okay, we can actually interpret a person's life based on the time again, okay. But we use China, the central China, as the main reference point. So you need to adjust the time a little bit, okay, if you are in Asia, because the sun rises at a different time. Okay, basically, it's a relationship between the planets, and we have these five elements. I'm sure you heard of that. Basically, those are the five planets that are closest to the Earth, namely the Venus, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. Okay,
mm,
we have these five elements. Basically, they represent the five types of energy. Okay, in simple terms, every person, okay, based on your birthday and time, you have a five element, a main reference point. For example, myself, right? I was represented by this fire element. Okay, but within the fire element, we have this yin and yang. So you have the positive and the negative. Okay, I happens to be the what we call the Bing Fo, which is the fire representing the sun. Okay, so based on this, we can already talk about your characters, right? And then looking at each year, okay, you have certain cycle that go with your body, and then we can interpret your life. Of course, it's not static, okay? It's dynamic movement because it changes every year, and every 10 year you have one, we call this Dai One, okay? Which is basically general trend of your 10 year.
mm.
So every 10 year, you're going to have a new one in addition to the new year. So it's never going to be the same. And then it also, changes if you are female and or male. Okay. They go in, different directions.
Mm.
And after, fortune telling, I went into Feng Shui. Feng Shui, I'm sure you heard of it. Basically, it's the energy of the house or the environment affecting you. And if you incorporate this into, the unified field theory, then you can understand it better because we are all connected. Okay, so certain energy, will benefit certain person at a certain time based on the direction and the environment. And I also learned divination. One of them is called Qimen, which is 奇門遁甲, 奇門遁甲. This is the one that I used to do, forecasts for New Year, because it's a very good tool that you can use, because you don't really need to rely on anyone to provide you with a birthday and time, and you can still make forecasts based on the event.
So is that forecasting a macro event, or is it forecasting for a person, or both?
Both. But there's like differences. If you're talking about long-term fortune telling, it's better to use the purple astrology and the Baji, because they are designed for that. Okay. But if you're talking about a relatively short-term event or independent event, then you can use that to actually forecast. And it has been quite powerful based on my experience.
Cool. So with the Bhati and the purple star astrology, let's just say I want to see like how my life is going to be for the next 10 years. How do you kind of like find out what is going on? Is it by studying, okay, Jupiter is going to be in this position and Venus is going to be over there? That means like someone's with your timestamp and your characteristics, and that means that your life is going to be more successful financially and less have more turbulence in romantic. Like, how do people work out like what's going on?
Okay. If you're talking about the purple astrology, right? Those planet star, they are just like reference stars. Okay, they are not the exact position in the universe. Okay, so they use that as symbols. Okay, based on that, right, you have a 10-year cycle. Okay, so they have basically 12 I would say palace. Okay, they call it palace. Okay, they have 12 palaces in your chart. Each represents 10 years. So basically, a person cannot live beyond 120 years old. Okay, with that, you look at the star that's representing you and the relationship when you enter this new palace, because it is dynamic, right? You have a static chart when you were born. Okay, but after a certain age, you move into another palace. Okay, and each palace has its own so-called, say 5 elements. Okay, so it's different energy. For instance, if you are a star called Jimei, which is the name of this purple astrology, then you will behave like a Jimei, or this so-called star. And this star, represents that this person is very subjective. Okay, and this person goes with his flow. Okay, he doesn't really care so much about other people. Okay, but when this star go into another palace, throughout his life, it can change, because there will be different combinations of star which is interacting with each other. So that's causes these changes up and down. Okay, and then of course your decision in life also makes a difference. For example, I see it from your chart that you are very suitable to move overseas. Okay, at the age of 20, for example. If you decided to move, then I would look at this palace in the opposite side, which is basically representing the environment that you are in when you travel outside of your home country. But let's say another person has the same chart, but he decided to stay, then the interpretation would be different, because this person, made a different decision. So what I'm trying to say is your decision actually influenced the interpretation of the chart. Same thing for Baji, right? You can enter a period where you have a lot of money-making opportunities, okay? But if you decided not to invest, you just do a regular job for the government, nothing much is going to happen, to be honest. Maybe you can get a raise, but it's going to be really small. But if you take that opportunity to invest or you do your own business, then you can actually make a lot more money. That's in short, this is how it works.
I guess bringing it down to earth a bit, how would someone best utilize, I guess even for me, like hearing what you said is a lot of learning. It's a lot, like you spend like years and years of really studying this to get to your level. So for me, like rather than trying to learn it myself, I go to someone like yourself and you're able to read my palm. And again, like I'm fascinated. I want to, if we get time, like how does the palm actually work? Like people can look at your palm and tell you your whole life and your destiny. Fascinating. But how could someone read your palm and look at your bashi, look at your date of birth, your time of birth, and studying your purple star astrology and using the different modality, how can they benefit to make their life more successful or more aligned? That's the first question. And secondly, if someone is going through the awakening journey, that hey, like they're seeing beyond the veil of life just in the 3D form, they can see, hey, like it's about consciousness, it's about connecting to remembering who we are and that we're loved and everything else. Like, how does this also assist us in this journey?
Very good questions. To answer your questions, I want to say that the Baji and the astrology is a very good way to help you to understand about yourself. Of course, you can use other methods such as the MBTI method. So you answer some questions, you understand yourself, or you have this Tony Robbins profile that can also help you to understand. But based on my experience, the Baji and the astrology can give you more color. Obviously, when you do the test, let's say for MBTI, right, it can change over time because your psychology is different, your experience is different. You're gonna, have a different results. But the chart and the purple astrology, the chart itself is going to be the same. So you're going to have some basic characteristics. And then when you grow older, it moves over time. It changes, with different combinations. So it's
Stephen, am I right in saying that those personality, like Myers-Briggs and this profile, are they more like identifying your personality traits, whereas like what you described, the Chinese art or even numerology, a lot of them, it goes deeper, it goes into your souls and personality and even spirits, desires and life path and all these other things as well.
sometimes you can tell. Yes, sometimes you can tell a person is spiritual or what type of religion, you know, he or she is more interested in. Okay, so it gives you more color, I would say. And then more importantly, it also talk about your relationship with your boss, your spouse, or with your children. So that's why I said it's a very good way to understand yourself. I mean, I'm sure you may resonate with this, right? When you say you were not doing very well in the past in Hong Kong in school, maybe at that time, you were not very suitable to study in a traditional education environment. Okay. If you knew that in advance, then you could actually go to, like, say, Australia or an international school in Hong Kong. That can actually make a huge difference to a person, because I have seen students, doing very poorly in traditional education, but after they, go to like US, they become a superstar all of a sudden, because that environment supports the values of this person. Okay. And to your second question, I think you talk about this spirituality stuff, right? The Chinese metaphysics part, like in this fortune telling method, it actually doesn't talk much about spirituality. Okay. But it does give you some indication to this person whether he's spiritual or not. Okay. And then again, you have your choices to freely choose. If you choose to flow with the natural flow of the energy, it's going to be smoother and the life will be, easier. Okay. But if you decided not to do it, you goes against the trend. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it will create more challenges. But we all know that in the spiritual paths that, every person has his own life purpose and he has certain lessons to learn, right? So if you know your natural path in advance, I believe it can help you to get through that process, easier. Okay. But I wouldn't say you can completely eliminate, the obstacle in front of you. Okay, that's not going to happen because you can only transform energy. Okay,
Hmm.
so if you're predetermined to have a certain event, but your reaction can be very different. So there are still values in the reading, but I wouldn't rely on the reading alone. Like I said, we live in a environment that are affected by the collective mind as well, and in the 3D reality, it's very difficult to change.
Hmm.
Okay, but if you can go beyond, this 3D reality, if you use energy or you develop your spirituality, it can certainly make a big difference. That's why I said earlier that the most difficult and the most powerful part of the five arts is this being part.
Yeah, I want to explore a bit more on that. Based on our conversation, my understanding is that the Chinese culture, it talks a lot less about God or a higher being. Not saying that whether it acknowledge or doesn't acknowledge there is one, but it focuses a lot more on energy or qi. And you talk about like flowing and knowing how to, because I just look at a lot of the culture, whether it's just doing the external activity, what they say, like before awakening, you carry water and you chop wood, and after awakening, you carry water and you chop wood. Like, but the sensation you get or the enjoyment you get from each present moment will be vastly different before and after awakening. And through a lot of the martial arts discipline is getting you to do these seemingly mundane activities, depriving them of like external like iPhones or external like bring LV or whatever like glamour stuff. But it's actually is to keeping life simple so you can cultivate the pleasure from within, not get distracting thinking the beauty is from outside and you need to bring it with you.
I agree. So in addition, to these, Chinese metaphysics, I personally do a lot of meditation. I also learn qigong. I know by being present, you can actually calm your mind, and at the same time, you can have more intuition and download.
Mm.
And by understanding yourself through your basic chart and going inside to understand yourself, that's combining what I call the left brain and right brain and have this coherence, which is, I believe, is the most powerful part. Because if you just do one, let's say you just do the metaphysics part without the intuition part, you still cannot unleash your full potential, or vice versa. But it takes times to practice. I'm sure you heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation, right? Even that can take you hours to the practice,
Yeah.
and you have to do it every day. And I can tell you the Chinese one is even more difficult because the Chinese meditation, they don't use like these so-called guided meditation. So they make you sit for so long with crossed legs. And the first maybe half year, the master will not teach you anything. Because he said if you can sit cross-legged for 45 minutes, then you become eligible to go to the next stage. But before you can get that done, he's not going to teach you anything.
Ah,
That's why I find it sometimes easier to learn the Western method
yeah.
in addition to the Chinese, so you can benefit from the both sides.
There was a phase in my life that I did quite a few of the guided meditation, and suddenly there's an urge to stop all guided meditation and just do like silent meditation. And at first, it's like, dude, like, what am I doing? Like, all I get is these thoughts that's coming in, but it's about like being present with the thoughts. So when you're not used to it, like, it seems like it's difficult. Like these days, especially in the busyness of our lives, like, how many of us like can stand in the queue or sit waiting for our kids or waiting for whatever and just not pull out our phone and keep our mind active? Like people say that, why do you need to go and watch movie? Actually not people, but one of the masters said, why do you need to like go watch a movie when you got thoughts like coming up all the time? Like it's just, why don't you just watch what's going on in your mind and watch it like a movie? Wow, this scene came up, that happened yesterday and it's coming up now. Oh, that's interesting. Ooh, You're judging that person. Oh, that's interesting too. When you think about dinner, it's only like 2 o'clock in the morning.
I mean, I had that kind of experience as well in the beginning. I couldn't really sit, still. So I had all these thoughts, coming into my mind. But over time, I developed, the habit of doing that. Then I got better. But then I found it helpful if I got in the right guided meditation or with some, what I call the binaural beats.
Yeah.
It really helped me to get into the alpha state.
Yeah. So, Master Stephen, I know that you've helped a lot of people through the work that you do. If you can give me like just like maybe one or two examples that jump out at you, how doing some of these modalities or through some of sharing with them like what you know through the five arts, you've helped someone like change their life, or maybe not helped someone, but kind of facilitate and guided them back on the right path.
Yes, I have done that. Just give you one example. A client of mine, actually has some family business issue. Okay, so she came to me for consultation. So first of all, I look at a chart. Okay, to basically help her to understand more about herself and her relationship with her father. And then later on, use another method called achievement, right? Based on the time when I met her, I used that time to set up a chart to look at her business. That was about, I think now, maybe 7 to 8 months ago. Okay. At the time, I could see that her, business was going to go down. Okay. At that time was just the beginning of the COVID, in Hong Kong. Okay, but I could see that her business was not going to do well. So I told her to sort of scale down, and at the same time to talk to her father at the appropriate time, so they could have a mutual understanding how they could pass on the business to her eventually. It worked out quite well, because nobody would know what happened exactly caused by the COVID. But based on her own life and the achievement chart, you could find something common. If you use two different methods or multiple methods and they come out to have similar conclusion, the accuracy is very, very high.
Yeah.
So I'm not telling people to just solely relying on the chart, but with that knowledge, it can help you to make a decision. The person that I help with, she was doing business with tourists. But as you know, we are not allowed to travel. So the business would not do well based on, even common sense. But that, actually helped her to make the decision. I'm sure a lot of people in this similar situation, they don't know when is it going to end. Then whether they should scale down their business or even close down their business, they have no idea. They have to take some kind of guess or make a judgment call. But with the help of the metaphysics, can give you more color. And then later on, after you go through this cycle and the learning process, if you can minimize your losses or exposure, then you have a better chance when you have so-called better luck in the future. You have more, resources to grow. That's one example.
Yeah, makes sense. Hey, this is completely random, but I've always got this question in my mind. With the palm reading, if you somehow, because I had an accident and a friend accidentally cut me and I've got an extra line on my palm, but if people actually slice like a line in their hand, does that kind of change the fate? And I guess the same thing goes with like reading your face. If someone does a nose job, kind of like looking like Andy Lau, they say if you have his nose, you make a lot of money or something. Like if people have like plastic surgery, does that alter their fate?
Actually, it does to a certain extent. Because in addition to the Baji or the purple astrology, your facial expressions or your bone structure can change. If you study more about this, what I call the imagery technique, you understand that by changing your subconscious minds, you can actually change your facial expressions and affects your morphology. Okay. And even without the surgery, if you change what's inside you, your outer experience can change. And that can actually dominate your so-called life chart to a certain extent. That's why it's important to maintain healthy, to have strong energy. And if you do, let's say a plastic surgery that's successful, that can actually give you more confidence, right? For some people who value beauty, let's say. Then over time, this person can be a man or woman, right? To develop more confidence, to feel good about, herself, then, she will actually have more energy to do her work. So in that sense, that can actually change fate. And then obviously, if you are a movie star and then you do a very successful surgery, then you look, much better than you used to be, then certainly that can help. But the fundamental inside you still remains the same unless you actually do some inner work yourself.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting all these random thoughts that's getting downloaded, but I got another random question. So kind of on a similar topic, but about hair. I know with some certain religious or not religious, spiritual understanding is that hair is like antenna to connect with the above. But you look at the Shaolin Temple and a lot of the Chinese, they shave their head. So do you have some understanding with hair, and what's your view on it?
I don't have a lot of experience on hair, but hair actually represents the element of wood. Okay. So for people who need wood in their body, right, they better, to have hair. Okay. And then also, long hair can actually make a person more feminine. Okay.
Mm.
So in that sense, if a person is very, I guess, masculine, and you want to soften this masculinity, then you can grow long hair. So
Mm.
in that sense, there's a difference.
Well, one of the things I guess before we end the podcast, I want to explore. You talk quite a bit about the yin and the yang, and the masculine and feminine energy. Can you elaborate a bit more on your understanding and how we can utilize that knowledge?
Sure, sure. The yin and yang is the most fundamental universal law, I would say. Okay, and it sounds simple, but it's also the most complicated one. So every person has yin and yang energy. Okay, so our goal is to balance this yin and yang energy. From a health perspective, right? If you have too much of one energy, you're gonna get sick. Okay, and in terms of your mind, right, you also need to have this yin and yang balance. So in Western term, I would call this, let's say, left brain and right brain. If you are very logical, scientific, quantitative, and you don't have any of the right brain, like creativity, passions, and intuitions, then you are not balanced. Okay. In that sense, you become a very polarized person, right? Then you are very logical and you actually oppose anything that is not scientific. Okay. And of course, you're going to have another person who is very right brain, very artistic, not talking about logic. That's not going to work well in the long run. If you want to unleash your potential, you have to follow this universal law. And it actually automatically balance you, even if you don't balance it yourself. What I meant is that if you are very logical, you're only left brain person, right? You're going to run into people that who are very right brained to constantly actually remind you that they are both sides in this world, and then you may start arguing with the other person because you're whole different view, right? But if you can develop both sides of that, right, then you see through the world that you're going to have yin and yang in any case, then you will be center, then you will actually be more balanced. And by doing that, you will have more intuition and you can actually develop other faculties that you may not be aware of. And in terms of, let's say, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, you can also call this yin and yang, right? Most of the people are actually driven by, our subconscious mind, right? Especially the adults. But we don't know that we are driven by this program that programmed into us over the years by our family, our cultures, and the society. Okay. If you are not conscious of it, then you are also not balanced. I would say the conscious part is like the yang part, and the subconscious is the yin. Okay. So all these spirituality work basically also trying to help you is to you bring your unconscious to conscious. So you understand more about who you really are. And by developing this mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically, you become what I call a whole person. And only at that moment, you will be able to fully unleash all your power. Okay. I myself is also working on that. When you reach a certain level, you are not done. You will move up to another level. It's like personal development. So you constantly evolve. You're going to see more challenges because that's part of nature.
Part of the matrix. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen, thank you so much. So if someone wants to like, hey, I want to get a session with you, or they want to learn more about you, like where should they go?
They can go to my website. My website is called masterstephenl.com. Actually, it's a beta version, but you can find my contact information there, and you can schedule a session with me, or you can, watch my YouTube channel. I had another website called ourlifemastery.com, so you can search that in Google.
Cool. I'll post these in the show notes. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. You've answered many questions I've wanted to know for quite some time. And we only just scratched the surface in what these thousands years old traditions that's been passed on from generation to generations. And if you get a chance, I do talk to Master Stephen Au. He's extremely knowledgeable. I can't wait to have a session with him and to kind of like find out more about myself, but also to test like how does that resonate with the gene keys, with numerology, and many other arts I guess study myself, because I found that overall, like what Stephen said, there's a degree of consistency. When you just do one of them on how your life is going to be, it gives you a very like one or two dimensional view of your life. But when you do three or four of them, multiple modalities combined together, it's like, wow, they kind of like, they give you like a 3D, 4D, 5D perspective. Wow, like everything kind of like, there doesn't seem to be any conflict. It just seems to like paint a much more comprehensive picture. And what are some of the things that you need to know in order for you to be living a harmonious life, a joyful life in the 3D world, but also in the awakening journey? What is your role? So, Stephen, back to you. What's the final word you want to share with our audience?
I want to tell everyone that Chinese metaphysics is not superstitious. They are authentic. Okay, if you go deeper into that, and actually you can find a lot of similarities in the Western metaphysics as well. And the more you study about this geometry as well as cosmology, you will find something in common. And we're all talking about the law of the nature, which is universal to all of us. And my key message to everyone is to balance your male and female energy. Okay, because that's the only way that you can unleash your highest potential. Thank you, Gary, for this podcast.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.